When I was in high school, I had this English teacher. Her name was Mrs. McClendon. You didn't ever call her by her first name, not if you valued your life. And she was one of those English teachers that you feared because everybody else you talked to that ever took a class from Mrs. McClendon had stories. So when I was a junior, I ended up having to take a class from her, and I decided, well, let's just get it over with. First class of the day. English Lit. I didn't discover caffeine until later in my life. Sad. But in her class, there was no safe spot. It didn't matter how the room was set up, whether it was a circle or a classroom. You could not possibly sit anywhere where you wouldn't be called on. I could sit behind the biggest guy from the football team and she'd call on me. It was impossible not to participate. Now, I think she had some sort of like torturous enjoyment out of all this. At least that was my opinion at the time. But what I learned from Mrs. McClendon has helped me through my life. And it's only of late that I've realized how much. So fellow Toastmasters, guests, go with me on this trip, on this journey. I'm here to talk a little bit about table topics. Because it's not just table topics. It's what table topics has to offer you. Does it sound a little odd? I know, you're still trying to digest this white stuff, right? That's pretty good, what? Table topics is the preparation, or for me, the manifestation of Eleanor McClendon. My first table topics experience was my first Toastmasters meeting. You see, I was one of those guests that got called on at the very first meeting. And I remember very little of that whole experience except the evaluation where she told me very kindly, well, Tom, I think you've had some public speaking experience, but you have this thing with your chin. See? Now, if you've noticed, I have no place to put my hands. That came later in other evaluations. But it occurred to me after that perhaps, whether I hadn't had public speaking experience or not really wasn't relevant, what I had was the experience of being put on the spot. Maybe I'm twisted. Maybe I kind of enjoy it. But that was the tip-off. So what I have to offer you today is a few perspectives from 4.5 years of both participating and enjoying table topics. And that first perspective that I have to offer you is this. It's a lot like life. You ever gone to your kid's classroom? I think the best example of table topics in action is the chaos of my daughter's 3rd grade class. When the teacher asks a question, how many hands go up in the air? The entire class. Nobody's afraid. But later on in life, perhaps we become more afraid. So the part of table topics I'm here to talk about is letting go of that fear. So what's a benefit, or more to the point, what's attached to fear? Well, for me, it's the elephant in the room. It's that other part of me that's the critic. Now, Tran talked about self-talk. For me, it's the self-critic who can slow you down faster than anything else, who can stop you dead in your tracks, and who can stop you from standing up and taking a risk of embarrassing yourself without worrying about it. So that's the first thing. That's fear. Table topics is a great way to do away with that. So I say embrace that. The second thing is, what happens when you get rid of the fear? Do you learn anything about yourself? I would say the answer is yes. I think you learn a lot about yourself. And guess what? That's a good thing. At least that's what my wife tells me. It is a good thing. You might say things and learn things, and more to the point, hear things that you wouldn't any other way. Because if you can deal with the elephant in the room, perhaps there's a little more elbow room. Perhaps there's a little more emotional room. And the last thing that I can think of is that we all can have fun if we get out of our own way. It seems to me that from a sociological standpoint, adults aren't given the permission, or more to the point, we don't give ourselves the permission to have as much fun as we encourage our children to do. I think that's all out of a line. I don't think there's anything wrong with giving ourselves not only permission, but perhaps the tools to have a little more fun. Now, some people do that on the ski slope. I used to do that before I became a dad. Some people do that in other ways. But I'm here to tell you, you can do it right here every Tuesday. Thank you very much.